Hello, everybody. Welcome to 3 Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
And I'm Samantha Cotterill.
And today we are interviewing Dusty from Somnium Games. Now, if that name doesn't sound familiar or that company doesn't sound familiar, it should be on your radar because they're doing something really fun and unique in the board game space. Dusty and his wife, Amy, just to give a little background information here, they started a board game company almost, I don't know, it was very deliberate. It wasn't by accident. It was a very deliberate choice to do. But I think what happened by accident, I don't want to say by accident, I think what happened by surprise was just how well received this brand of board games is. And go over to their website. You're going to check it out. Dusty describes it in the podcast. It's board games for Amy and her friends, essentially, right?
Yeah.
So, and if you describe it, there's a board game about collecting flowers during the Victorian era, going around the world collecting flowers. There's a board game about essentially taking the Regency era and the whole Pride and Prejudice Jane Austen thing and turning that into a board game. I think about building relationships or finding love or something. I haven't played that one. There's a new game, Botany, with a dragon edition of it. So it's like collecting fantasy flowers, I guess, or fantasy dragons. He'd do a better job introducing all this for sure. But in this interview, we talked to Dusty and not Amy. Amy's the illustrator, and Dusty's sort of like the business behind this whole thing. And that was like a deliberate choice on our part because you've heard the artists, you've heard us, we know how to create a thing. We don't know how to often market and sell a thing, and that's what Dusty talks to us all about today.
And excels in.
Add?
And excels in. So, yeah.
Yes. So should we jump into it?
Let's do it.
Yeah, so I'm Dusty Droz, co-founder of Somnium Games with my wife, Amy. We are serial entrepreneurs, so we have 4 businesses that are actively or slightly inactively running currently. Mm-hmm. And the board game thing started as really, I just wanted to paint miniatures, and I needed an excuse to make miniatures, and then we realized that miniatures are really difficult to make, and we started making our historic games, and those just sort of went through the roof from there. We live in the middle of nowhere in California. The nearest grocery store is 17 miles away, and we have a little flower farm.
Nice. And Amy, so tell me the difference between you two. Amy's the artist, right?
Amy is the whole business. Yeah, I facilitate all of Amy. Yeah.
Okay.
Are we doing like super businessy stuff today? Because If I don't know if you've ever heard of wealth dynamics, they charge you a lot of money to tell you what you probably already know about yourself. It's like, what are you good at? And so Amy is a creator. She creates all day. She can't stop creating. It's just what she does. This morning, I was brushing my teeth, and she's sitting on the bed, and she's telling me about 20 different game ideas she has, all of which are totally viable, and she could start tomorrow if she wanted to. She just can't stop creating. My job has always been thus. We've been together since we were 14, by the way. So we started our businesses shortly after college and everything. My job has always been to create the engine that basically runs a business around her creativity.
Awesome.
And I enjoy that a ton. So I do all the math, I do all the data, I figure out how we're going to send 11 shipping containers with 90,000 units in them to 4 different continents, and then she just creates, and I let her run wild in that framework.
That's cool, because I think our listeners are predominantly illustrators, and a lot of us have got the art part, the creative part down, but a lot of us do struggle with, what do you do with these brilliant ideas that you have? How do you actually make them tangible? How do you get them into the world? And so that's really like what I would love to hear from you is, how did a cool idea for a board game go from just a cool idea to a best-selling board game?
Yeah, so I think it stems back to, step 1 is to find people to help you with the things you are not good at. Okay. And that's where I think 99% of artists struggle, is that they're very creative people, and they're not business people. And so I see a lot of, the board game industry is so we come from the wedding industry, was one of our businesses. And that industry is like 99% creatives. Well, creatives and DJs and cooks, basically. But lots and lots of creatives, all running small businesses. There's very few major corporate entities in the wedding world outside of, like venues, like think your average golf club or something like that.
Yeah.
And where so many of them would get into trouble is that they would, they wouldn't understand how to value their time, and they wouldn't understand the value of their work, which is that, who was it? Was it Van Gogh that died like poor and alone, and and now he's one of the most famous artists in all of existence. And I find that he was not alone in that feeling, as far as creatives go, about thinking, it's not good enough, or no one's going to buy it, or there's no way I could ever monetize this. And so the key there is to find somebody who can help you do those things. So with our board games, it started, it literally did start with, I want to start painting miniatures. And I guess I've shot 386 weddings, which I suppose makes me an artist, but I never identify myself to another person. Like, I'm an artist, right? Because I still think of myself more like an engineer. Like, Amy's being creative with all the photography, and I'm going into a situation and going, okay, this room is super dark. I need to figure out how to make that light well, and how to do this, and that person's going to do that thing, and they're walking. So I'm still approaching it from like an engineering perspective. And it's the same thing with business is you got to walk into a room and say, okay, here's my creation, here world, see it. But how do I make money off of this? And when you say an illustrator's, if they're doing concept art, if they're writing books, if they're making board games, it's the same problem where you've created this beautiful thing, and now you got to figure out who is this for? Who's going to love it? Who's going to want to buy it? Right? Who will see this thing and know instantly that they must have it? And that, so for most creatives, unless you there's very few I meet that are also like super into spreadsheets and because they're their own form of art, I would argue. They're super into spreadsheets and painting. Find somebody who can help you do that. And I think for a lot of people, like the best, agents, art agencies, and I don't know much about art agencies, I just hire them to do art for us, but find an agent who is good at selling your work and putting your portfolio out there, and negotiating contracts and making sure that you're being paid appropriately for the work you're doing. Find a business partner if you're doing something. Imagine that you're like knitting hats. Well, that's art, right? And how many people do you see knitting like beautiful hats on Etsy? Then they're like, it has 3 sales, and I'm like, well, you just haven't found the right person to help you find who wants to buy this. I'm very rambly, by the, way, but that was sort of my
that's okay. I have to interject really quickly because I find it so exciting and fascinating that board games is, to me, the perfect avenue for marrying the engineering side of the brain and the illustration side of the brain. And I say that because my younger son is a student at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, which is a very renowned engineering school. My husband's a professor there, and he is studying role-playing tabletop gaming design. And it is this beautiful coming together of students that are very versed in the side and interested in the sides of the mathematical approach and the engineering approach, and combined with the illustration approach as well. And it's this wonderful coming together of these two worlds. It's this basically you and Amy coming together as well, where you've got these two halves of the brain creating in an atmosphere and a medium that works beautifully for those two together. And I just...
Yeah, and so, and you'll appreciate this coming from an academic family, that creativity isn't just visual arts, right? Creativity is also in coming up with solutions to problems, which is, that is basically, to me, the definition of engineering, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And
yes.
board games are heavily involved in mathematics and everything else in that regard. And so I do think it is an interesting place where they all come together. It's also a strange industry because, like the wedding industry, it's highly accessible to small businesses, which there's not a lot of industries like that. Like if you want to become, if your sort of visual format is like, say, like filmmaking, well, that's a really hard industry to break into as an independent. Or if you're a creative, if you're a writer, that too is a very difficult industry to break into as an independent. Board games, like people ask us, they're like, oh, how come you didn't go find a major company to publish your game when you created it? We're like, we didn't even know. We just come from small business. We just went and found a manufacturer and then found a company to help us market and then just started learning the industry. And then we found out, oh yeah, lots and lots of people don't do this. Lots and lots of people just go and find one of the big companies. Because it's a weird place. You can, if you walk into Target, there's little bitty companies sitting on the shelf right next to major corporations.
Yeah.
And there's no
amazing.
differentiation between them. So yeah, I think 100%. It's like a little playground for all kinds of people. And most of the most effective teams I know in the industry have a mix of that wealth dynamics wheel where they have different people who are good at all those different things and they brought them all together in one team. So there's somebody that's good at sales and there's somebody that's good at negotiation and there's somebody that's good at engineering and creating the system. And there are people that are creative and then there's people that cross different pieces of those because you end up having to wear like a whole lot of hats in one shot.
I want to take you back to something you said there. With your original game, it was Amy had a cool idea, or maybe you both kind of collaborated.
No, it was all Amy. Yeah,
okay.
I was making I am still making a game about sci-fi and fantasy with an interesting ensemble of characters. Like, there's not a million of those already.
Right. Right. Well, that's to my point is that you said the idea came first, and then it was how do we find the audience for this? And my question there is, how do you know the thing that you're creating actually has an audience? And I would think a game about collecting flowers would have a very small audience, but you definitely proved that wrong. So how do you like know to trust that gut feeling, or when to say, no, that's probably not a path to go down? Do you have data inputs to tell you when to say this isn't a good idea, or do you just go for it?
So it's a little bit of yes to all those things.
Gotcha. Okay.
We were working on my other game that is still slowly being worked on. We've made like 7 games since then, by the way, since we started that one. And we started to realize, wow, it's just really expensive to make miniatures. You got to pay a sculptor, you got to pay for tooling, you got to pay for art. It's like $2,000 a character. We want to have 20 characters in this game. Like, that math started to add up really fast. And that was still going to be considered a small game compared to some of the stuff that's out there. Like, I know people that make miniatures games where they'll invest 200, 300 grand just into one box worth of art stuff. Yeah. And that's not, and if you're thinking from a small business perspective, that's a very difficult bar to start from. As opposed to saying investing, like, all you got to do is make back $2,000. Like, those are big differences in the world for how much you need to recoup your investment. And so she came into the kitchen one morning. She's like, all right, well, this is going to take a while. This is really expensive. I have an idea. And I'm like, okay, what's your idea? And she's like, oh, I've been reading all these books. By the way, one of our other businesses, we have a little flower farm. We have about a few acres of lavender, and we make flower presses. We stopped making those flower presses because it turns out way more efficient to make board games. But we made like custom handcrafted Etsy shop walnut flower presses is what we were making for that. Still technically in business, just in hibernation. But so she comes in. She's like, I have an idea. I've been reading all these books about these crazy Victorians that would go all over the planet, risking life and limb to pick flowers, and they're on the side of active volcanoes while they're erupting, and they're losing eyes, and they've got pet falcons. And I'm like, these guys sound like superheroes. And she's like, yeah, they were like myth and legend basically. And I said, okay, well, that's pretty interesting. So what are you doing with these flowers? She's like, well, they were studying them, so they would press them. And I'm like, okay, well, that's really on brand for us. Or they would take them back to England, and like Kew Gardens was one of the first repositories of flowers from around the world, and they started spreading all this knowledge about flowers, and that's where the conservation movement is spread from, and all this stuff. And I was thinking, okay, well, there's other like non-traditional board game things, think like Wingspan and stuff like that, and so maybe this could work. Let's that seems a lot faster. Let's try it out. So like within a week, the game was 90% done, sitting on our table with printer paper and all this stuff, and Amy had already started doing all the graphic design. We went to the marketing folks we were working with, said, hey, we're gonna do a little bait and switch here and flip, and because this is coming together really fast. As far as like market niche, I mean, Amy's operating statement is, I want to make pretty games for me and my friends. As you can imagine, the board game industry is not like rife with pretty games for Amy and her friends who shop at Anthropologie and Pottery
Right.
Barn and Williams
Yeah.
Sonoma. And so we didn't know that that was a big market niche or was going to be as big as it was. I mean, mathematically, now I understand. You know, you think about like the core board game industry considers itself like Board Game Geek. And that's like 100,000 unique users. There's 157 million people in America alone that own a board game. Well, obviously, there's going to be a lot of different interest groups in that
Right.
range. And so we sort of like knowing that Amy sort of like organically recognized there wasn't a game for her. We didn't say, aha, we have found it. We are making a game for Amy's. And then we made the game. And then it turned out there's a lot of Amy's in the world who want a pretty board game for themselves. And so we did that with LaFleur. We did that with Artistry. We did that with Dearman, our last campaign. It just sort of stemmed from there. That said, you know, if you're out in the, you know, if your listeners are out in the world, like, you know, how do I figure this out? You know, first off, keep making, you yourself are going to have the best gut instinct for the market niche that you're hoping to fill, right? Once you get into that market niche, you have to be first, best, or different if you're thinking about like a product. So you either need to be the first person doing the thing, you need to be the best person doing the thing, or you need to be doing something different about doing the thing. And so if you think about, it says that Jake is drawing comics. So think about comics, right? Okay, DC is first. Marvel comes along and they're different, right? And then you get Image Comics that comes in, and what do? They're not just making more DC and Marvel, they're making new stuff. And Dark Horse enters the race, and they're making new stuff, different stuff. So you got to think that way. Like, okay, now I have found what I love, but is it first, best, or different? Well, we already talked about how artists are never going to think their stuff is best. But maybe go out and find independent people to tell you if your stuff is best or not. And if it's not like the absolute best Spider-Man that's ever been drawn, that's been done a lot, maybe make a new superhero. Maybe pick something different. Maybe find a market niche that hasn't been filled. And so for us, our market niche, so the board game industry is 85% guys. Our customers are 80% women. And so, you know, we're just playing in Amy's playground, giving her friends all kinds of stuff that they would want to play and enjoy. And when we design, and it's every level of the business. How do we present our website? It doesn't look like any other board game websites. It looks like Pottery Barn. Why does it look like Pottery Barn? Because all our target market is buying there. And Amy really likes that design aesthetic, and she just wants our site to look pretty. But as it would happen, all her friends also like how pretty that site looks and how different it is. When we're designing a game, sometimes I'll be like, I have this great idea. And Amy goes, I hate that idea. And I'm like, great, it's gone. Because if you hate it, your friends are going to hate it. Like, we're not doing that. I'll save it for something else.
Like, not to interrupt, but it really kind of resonates when I'm going through the gaming store and I'm looking at all the games. It is, the design choices are so brilliant because you see shelf upon shelf of board games all lined up, and yours are these beautiful books. And the way that the spine of this book versus, let's say you've got like Command of Nature or a bunch of other books where the text is sideways, you have this beautiful gilded kind of where you want to fill your shelf with these because it's aesthetically really beautiful. And so the attention to detail, just even from how does this board game look as it's like stored on the shelf and sitting on the shelf and becomes this beautiful collection library, that I feel like you've just really tuned in to that aesthetic that is missing a lot when you're scanning these shelves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's 100% what we're hoping for. Amy and I listen to rock and metal. You would never know it by the games we make. But there's a band called Nothing More, and the lead singer of that band used to be the drummer, and he's one of the best singers in all of rock music in the last 20, 30 years. And I remember hearing him tell a story once saying when he was the drummer, he just did backing vocals, but then they lost their vocalist very early on. And so he started to sing, and he didn't know that he could sing. And all of a sudden people are like, oh my gosh, this sounds so different. This is incredible. This is amazing. He's like, okay, I guess maybe I can. Well, with Botany, we had a few different artists and design companies come in, and one of them started making boxes for us. And I remember the first time I saw the box, I'm like, wow, this is incredible. This looks like a real board game box. And Amy looks at it and she goes, I don't want that. And I'm like, why not? It looks incredible. She's like, it looks like a board game box. And I'm like, we're making a board game. And she's like, I want it to look like a book. And
Beautiful,
so she's like,
beautiful.
let me go ahead and make it. And so we had kind of the same thing where we started off like we got to hire somebody to make this box because and Amy basically didn't know she could sing when it came to board game boxes. And now the first thing I do, this happened on Endearment. So the first thing I do is we sit on opposite ends of the office about 20 feet apart. And she'll say, hey, what do you think of this? And I'll just turn around in my chair from 20 feet away and I'll see what I can see on her screen. Like, does that box stand out from this far away? And be like, I don't know. I can't tell what it says or I can't tell what's going on. And she's like, yeah, but come over here. I'm like, yes, but right now I can't tell what it says. And I remember the first time I turned around with Endearment's box, she goes, okay, what do you think about this? And I was like, that's fire. And she's like, don't you want to see it closer? I'm like, nope, that's the box. Like, that's perfect. And so I come closer and I'm like, yep, it's even more of the box up close. Just because it doesn't look like, and, the gold foil was another thing. And she's like, I want gold foil on the box. I'm like, it's 1/10 the cost of the entire board game. We can't put gold foil on the box. She's like, I want gold foil on the box. So we had that as a stretch goal on Botany's first Kickstarter. And, this was like the moment that I really began to understand like what we was like halfway through the campaign. The campaign was obviously going super well, but I personally, even having, done all this stuff for Amy for at this point, we've been together. I mean, Amy and I have been together for 28 years now. I hadn't quite realized, but she's like, we did the stretch goal for the foil and the foil unlocks and I started getting emails, tons of emails. Oh, my mom and I were watching the countdown, and when we saw the gold foil unlock, we both screamed. And I'm like, see, Amy knows how to make the girls scream. It's gold foil. So every game we make has gold foil. We're making a little bit of game called Victorian Greeting Card Showdown. That box of gold foil on it lights up like the 4th of July when you walk by it.
Well, like everything and the attention. And I will say one of my favorite parts of those games too are the patterns on the backs of the cards. Beautiful.
Amy's in the office and she just heard you say that. She's really happy about it.
Beautiful patterns. And it's those eye-catching things. So it's just comes together and there's this most beautiful package that really does take it into its own realm outside of within the board game, which is a huge industry. I mean, it's really, you really see the artistry that's coming out in these games. Yep. And so just really well thought out.
Yeah. And so for your listeners then, basically, I think that the moral of all that story is to just follow, like, so many people are worried about like what's everybody going to think. And so that is important, but I think it starts with follow what you are interested in, because that is where you're going to deliver your best work. That is where you're going to create the most unique thing. That, people can see the passion and stuff like that when you create it. And then once you get there, then go find, figure out who and how do I sell this to? Start showing it to people, see how they react, try and find your market niche. If you have a little money to spend, start running meta ads for your product and see which audiences are performing the best. It's unfortunate that you got to spend money to do that, but Meta will tell you within 2 days. Amy's walking by going like this. She's basking in her glow. That's the challenge, I think, for a lot of people. I see a lot of very professional games, like really good looking games that haven't sold yet. And they start advertising for their pre-campaign and the game looks sharp. And I'm looking at it going, there must be an audience out there. It's not my audience. So I can't like immediately point like that's where it is. Or that's where it is. And you see them sort of struggle to find the people that would really like react to and purchase the game right away. And then maybe after 3-4 weeks of kind of like, not having a fruitful like advertising campaign, they'll finally find the audience. For us, some of our best audiences are like we advertise to people who are interested in Better Homes and Gardens. It has absolutely nothing to do with board games. We don't even mention board games. We're just like, look at this board game, Better Homes and Gardens, folks. And they're like, flower board game. This never occurred to me. And so I would argue that it's not about whether like people are out there looking for your art. It's about how big is the audience, and you have no control over how big the audience is, but and how crowded is the audience. So sometimes you might create a thing and you'll find, oh, there's a very small audience for that, but they're super dedicated to me because I'm the only person filling that market niche. Sometimes you might, oh, that's a really crowded audience. Yeah, but it's so crowded that even the massive amount of entries in that audience aren't big enough to fill it. And so you're just trying to find that place where your super fans are and where they will react to your product and want to purchase it. And
when you did your first Kickstarter campaign and I looked at it and it's so a very professionally put together and just an insanely beautiful package. Did you have a lot of research and kind of figuring out what you needed to do before you put that together? Or how did you know what to do when putting together your first campaign that just went, was it in 15 minutes that it?
It was in minutes. Yeah, I think it was 9 minutes that we funded. The funny thing about that is I told Amy, I was like, okay, now let's set, we're about to set it live. I'm like, okay, we've done all this pre-campaign. We saw that. So we sell a little mini expansion before the campaign, like just a fun way for our fans to get something extra and have a little fun before the campaign. We had sold a bunch of those, which we were really surprised by. But I was like, here, let's just set our expectations. We're going to click this button. We're going to set it live. And then we're going to sit and nothing's going to happen and nothing's going to happen. And then maybe someone will buy a thing and then maybe someone else, and we'll just sit here for a while, and an hour will go by and we'll refresh this 100 times in that hour. And maybe we'll hit a little bit. And so we click the button to go live, and I'm like, all right, let's plan it. Oh my gosh, someone bought something. Oh my gosh, more people are buying something. And one of our friends wanted to be the first backer. I'm like, you better back quick. You're not even gonna make top. And it's going like up the map. And that was the whole day was just like that. And Amy's just staring at the screen in disbelief going, wow, I can't believe people want this. As far as the campaign page, the brilliant thing about marketing is there's not a lot of new stuff to learn or try. And so all you have to do is just go look at all the other marketing that's come before, and the research has been done, right? You can know what was a bad idea. You can go find out what was a good idea. You can look at highly successful Kickstarter campaigns and see like what did they do. And that's not to say copy them one for one, because I've been talking a lot about audiences. Every audience is looking for different things. They're looking for different key selling points. They have a different journey when you take them through a page. So we look at our pages as a customer journey. Like, what's the first thing that our girls want to see? And so a lot of board games, Kickstarters start off with just like, here's the spread out of all the stuff you get. Like, our girls don't really care about that. They want to see, a picture of the box of botany in a field, right? That's not the traditional place that most board games start their campaign. But you could see, lots of campaigns start off with this kind of thing, or they show these kind of things. They talk about these kind of things. Well, that's not the stuff we would talk about, but we should talk about stuff to begin with. So we're looking at the overarching structure of the page and then figuring out what to do from there. And so, a lot of creatives, when I talk about the wealth dynamics, they think that they have to pay someone to help them. But the internet is this vast, vast library of resources of people who are good at marketing and good at selling. And when you go look at other campaigns, there is, I'm trying to think, okay, so there's a photographer we know. Her name is Sue Bryce. And one of the things that she told me as we were working with her was that if you watch the way that like a woman goes through a clothing store, they touch the fabric. Everywhere they go, they touch the fabric, and they're looking at something. I mean, like if I buy a shirt, this shirt, I did not touch this shirt before I bought it. I did not touch it till I was wearing it. I looked at it and I said, that's a nice shirt, right? I'll get that. But if you watch, they touch. Sometimes they touch things, they're not even looking at them. They touch a thing and then they look at it like, what was that, right? That's just this, and so that's the way they experience like the buying process. And so when we're doing a Kickstarter campaign and we know that 80% of our customers are women, we're looking at the page and we're saying, okay, but where can they feel the quality? Where can they touch? Where can they get gold foil that kind of gives that visual sensation? One of my friends, and so back to the original point, I was about to go on off another rabbit hole. One of the things that we're thinking about, like in terms of like, when we can learn from more, and like obviously in the very beginning when we did botany, we didn't know a bunch of contractors that were good at selling in the industry. We didn't know a lot of theory about how do you do a Kickstarter campaign. It was our first Kickstarter. We went and looked at all these other people who were successful, who had done these things before us, and they filled those slots on the wealth dynamic wheel for us. Right? Oh, I don't know how to sell a pledge tiers. What's the best way to do pledge tiers? Oh, look at these guys. Oh, that's really smart. Small, medium, large. They have effectively done our selling for us just by existing on the world, and for us to take, basically doing the legwork to go out and find them, to look at what they've done, to study it. So those resources are available everywhere. Everywhere you can go find that kind of stuff. Yeah. And it's not, and it's the same thing when people struggle. Like there's a lot of people on the planet that are really good at something and they struggle with being creative. Same thing. Go find the creatives that came before you. See what kinds of things they did that worked, and then apply what you're good at. What you learn from them, take it and slot it into what you're good at, and apply it that way. So you can start small. And so back to your original question about how do we do the campaign page. Basically, we went out and looked at everybody who'd been successful. We saw all the things we liked about what they did, all the things that were clearly smart about what they did, and then we combined them in a way that fit our like our audience specifically.
And that audience is, like you said, not necessarily all have to be within the board game realm. You have this whole audience, and I think of Troy, New York, where I'm living. They film a lot of the historical shows from HBO, Gilded Age, and there's a lot of those shows. And so when they film here, it's this wonderful transformation to a town in the 1800s and all of this dress and gorge. And I see this whole audience of people that really love that historical, romantic history, that even if never having played a game before would see this and just want to start playing because there's such a connection aesthetically with the thematics of your games. And I really see that with Botany, to the point where your game that's upcoming, the Floral Dragons, Jake is a massive dragon illustrator. I don't, but I want to now love dragons because this game is so visually appealing to me that you're introducing me to another whole world of dragons just from your game that's coming out. So
that's cool to hear. That's perfect.
Yeah, I have a question to that point. And there's like a gap in this line of logic that I'm seeing here. And that was, you have the idea, you trust your gut, you build out a Kickstarter page, you build out the game, you build out the Kickstarter page, and then you said that you were going to launch this little Kickstarter benefit for your fans, right?
Yep.
So my question is in between there was gathering a fandom around this thing that hasn't actually been created yet. And I'm curious, how did you go about doing that?
Oh, now we're moving into the realm of clairvoyance and crystal balls. So you wouldn't know it when you look at Kickstarter because there's so many Kickstarters and you see so many successful ones, but I don't remember. Some incredibly high number of Kickstarters don't fund. And you never even see them because they go up, they don't even make it on the list, they don't even make it on the pages. So when we first started, the first thing I did was I typed in how to Kickstarter, like as a phrase on Google, just to see what happened. Amy's brother had run a Kickstarter in 2014 and he made $30,000 for a video game. He's a video game, like indie video game designer. And we just had our minds blown. And so this was 2023 though, so it had been a while, or 2022 at the time. And so I went and typed in how to Kickstarter, and the first thing that came up was this company called LaunchBoom. And LaunchBoom is a really cool company that helps you build a pre-campaign audience. But rather than being an agency where they do it for you, it's like a dual education and coaching platform where you go in and they teach you, how do you identify your target audiences? How do you come up with the key selling points for your game? Like for us, it's pretty and it's about flowers and it's about Victoria, and you don't have to know. Like you don't have to have a PhD to learn how to play it, and you can play it with your friends and family and all this stuff, right? And then then they teach you how to run meta ads, which is a big part of the foundation of the kind of research we do, because meta gives you just this incredible platform for like $100, you can show your game to 10,000 people and you can see, like, oh, how are people reacting? Which pictures are they reacting to? I put up 4 pictures and they're reacting hardest to this one. Well, I learned that way how to do that. So we went to launch when we started with 0 following. By the time we were done with about 3 months of just advertising and community building through LaunchBoom, we had 10,000 followers who had given us their email and said, let us know when this launches. And we had another 2,500 people who had bought our little mini expansion before the campaign. And which is basically saying even harder, yeah, I really want this. And ooh, that looks super fun. I'd love to get that too. Right. And so, the whole goal there, because now I'm going to move back in math brain and 4-dimensional math, like chess here. But the whole goal there is that rather than launching the campaign and just being like, oh boy, I hope it does well, we want to launch the campaign knowing as close as we can come to without it actually happening, until we launch the campaign, that we're going to fund successfully. And so figure I got to hit a certain amount of money to bring the product to life. And so for us, that tends to be around $20,000 to meet our manufacturer's minimum order quantity. And so if I know I need to make $20,000 and I'm selling my game for $50, and I assume that everybody doesn't get anything but the base game, that means I need to have about 400 backers. Okay, well, if I need to have about 400 backers, what are the historic conversion rates for all these different things? So Kickstarter followers tend to convert between like 10 and 15% on day one on a campaign. And so if I need 400 backers and I assume 10% conversion rate, that means I need 4,000 followers on my campaign before I launch if I want to be certain that I'm going to succeed and be able to pay, quote, air quotes again, certain that I'm going to succeed, and I want to be able to, fund that $20,000 I need to make the project happen. If I'm only collecting emails, well, emails convert at like 1 to 3%. Like, oh my God, I need like 40,000 followers, 40,000 emails in order to ensure that I make that $20,000. For us, with the kind of community building we do, we have about a 60% conversion rate on people who before the campaign say, "Ooh, I'm super interested in that." And then, so when we launch, now if I need 400 backers, I shouldn't be doing math live on the air inside out on my head, but I need something like 700 VIPs ish to get 400 backers at a 60% rate.
Okay.
And so,
and then how does that, so in terms of, I fear that a lot of people get scared away from doing this because of maybe a misconception of the costs with tariffs. And I remember you had talked about that in a different interview about the reality of really what is the cost considering tariffs against the game that you're putting together for shipping purposes and costs, and that it isn't as high as maybe some people fear and prevents them from actually going full into developing a game. Does that make...
Yeah. So I'm going to preface this by saying that people have been confusing economics and politics for thousands of years. Like, you can read books about ancient Rome and you're like, wow, they really got their economics and politics confused, didn't they? So we're gonna so these statements are completely devoid of politics because there is no emotion in politics. There is only math in my life.
Okay.
And so regardless of what you think about tariffs or anything else going on the planet, just set that aside and let it be its own little grumpy thing for a while. Tariffs. When the tariffs first happened, we were looking at 145% tariff. Okay. And everyone in the board game industry really, really, really started to freak out about it. And the reason was not the cost. I mean, the cost was a problem, but many people are running super tight margins, and many people didn't have the cash on hand to pay those tariffs because they completed their Kickstarter and they spent it on many other things. And tariffs are not the issue here. The issue is that every single year, Amy and I don't know if you guys have read The Expanse, but in The Expanse, they call it the churn. And Jake, have you read The Expanse?
I'm familiar. I haven't read it yet, but I'm familiar with
so they have this idea
world.
of the churn, and the churn is basically like, tsunami, earthquake, something's gonna happen. And so we look at it and we're like, it's not if something is going to happen this year, or I hope something, it's what's gonna happen this year. To me, nothing catastrophic has happened to our business yet, and it's February, and that makes me a little nervous about what's gonna happen next week or in March or in June. Something's gonna happen. And so we always make sure that we have plenty of margin to deal with all the problems on everything we do. We always make sure that we don't spend our Kickstarter cash until the product is delivered to customers. That cash is not considered free and usable because something's going to come up. Pandemic, shipping crisis. The Houthis are firing rockets into the Red Sea. And I mean, and I can actually tell you the $4,892 that those rockets cost me, because I have done 3 ships now that have had to go around Africa instead of through the Suez Canal. Like everything you see on the news, like when you're doing global shipping, everything you see on the news has an effect. And then, so that was one. And then tariffs come along. And in the beginning, 145% was really high. But I looked at like historically, like, who is traditionally in favor of or opposed to tariffs. Well, if anybody's listening outside the United States, historically, it's Democrats that have always wanted tariffs, not Republicans. Well, how does that fit? If Trump is a Republican, but Trump is not a Republican, he's a populist. And what does that tell me? Okay, that tells me that we are now working in so a lot of people are like, well, they're going to get overturned. They're going to this or that. If I'm looking at just history, that tells me that no matter who ends up in the White House next, tariffs are probably going to stay. If tariffs are going to stay, okay, well, now I'm not thinking, oh, but what if it changes in the future? Now I'm thinking, this is reality, and what is the math? Okay, well, if you look at the history of tariffs often start very high, and then they get negotiated back down. And so a lot of people had a very knee-jerk and panicky reaction. Hopefully I'm answering the question here, because I'm going into some deep psychology.
No, this is good.
So a lot of people have a very knee-jerk reaction to tariffs. I'm raising the price of my board game from $60 to $100. Well, okay, but the average tariff on a box of LaFleur is $1.32. That doesn't really justify a $40 price hike. And so a lot of people in the beginning didn't understand how tariffs worked, myself included. And even though I pay them all over the planet, I didn't understand what the percentages meant. I just understood what the raw dollars were. So the first thing I did is I went and looked and, okay, how do tariffs work? Oh, that's how tariffs work. Wow, that's not nearly as apocalyptic as it sounds, right? Okay, historically, tariffs start high because there's some sort of negotiation and treaties that are happening. The negotiation happens, and then tariffs stabilize. Tariffs traditionally stabilize much lower than they are to begin with. All right, so the first thing I did not do was panic and start writing a bunch of stuff on the internet and freaking out all my backers. The first thing I did was nothing. I did absolutely nothing. I just sat still and I waited to see what would happen. And then tariffs did stabilize and they came down to 30%. Well, it turns out that if you're shipping into Europe, if you're shipping into Asia, you're already paying those tariffs everywhere. And so everybody's so all we've done is sort of bring ourselves in a line with the rest of the planet. Shipping into India, it's like a 50% tariff on anything that comes into there. Okay, I ship things to India all the time. All right, great. Now, what does the math say? Well, at a 30%, my tariff on a box of LaFleur is $1.32. Okay, how does that compare to other things I pay? Well, my Stripe fees on a box of LaFleur selling through Shopify are $2.03. I don't see anybody out there freaking out about their Stripe fees, and they've been paying those for years. Credit card fees have been around as long as credit cards have been. And so now I'm thinking, all right, this is very interesting. Okay, I just have to figure out, like, do I need to raise my price to account for this $1.32? No, because I got to make sure I have good enough margins to deal with all the problems that come up. The most interesting thing, and the realization I just came to about 2 weeks ago, last year, at the end of January, it's a very expensive shipping time because everybody's trying to get stuff out of China before Chinese New Year. I shipped a full container of LaFleur, so maximum container efficiency, the absolute best volume price I could get on LaFleur, and it was $2.40 a box. This year, end of January, right before Chinese New Year, 1 for 1, I'm shipping a full container of LaFleur. Everything about it is identical. And instead of $2.40 a box, tariffs have put so much downward pressure on ocean freight because everybody is holding their more stock in China, and they're only bringing stuff into the United States on an as-needed basis. Well, that's not a really controversial thing because Dell Computers revolutionized the computer industry by doing on-demand delivery years or decades ago. So, but it has put so much downward pressure on freight costs because freight costs change every week. Think about the shipping crisis where there were cans of SpaghettiOs sitting off the coast because they couldn't afford to land them because it cost $33,000 for containers to $8,000 for container. Now, to ship a box of LaFleur, it's 82 cents or 88 cents. Yeah. So my shipping cost has come down by $1.52. My tariff has gone up by $1.32. And oh my God, my margin is 20 cents better than it was a year ago before tariffs started. So the apocalypse came, and on the other side of the apocalypse, my margin was 2.54% better per box.
Yeah.
So the moral of that story is not that one thing is right or wrong, and not that, I believe in one philosophy over the other. The moral is, like, we talk about what we can control, and what I can control is not tariffs and not geopolitics and not war and not what the hurricanes are doing in the South Pacific. The only thing I control is how I react and the math I do. And it turns out that if you just hold still and wait and see, that things were not bad. In fact, you could make an argument that mathematically things are better for us for every box of LaFleur we sell.
And I think that further supports.
You're never going to hear me say.
I think that further supports the idea of, as an artist and illustrator, pairing yourself with someone who has that ability to look at things through that mathematical economic lens that you may not be able to do so, in order to see the reality of what's needed and what for projections of your game coming out. So
because let's be real, what's the essence of creation? It is emotion, right? And for most creators, their emotions are their greatest tool. However, when a hurricane shows up, sometimes emotions are not the best tool for the situation. Sometimes math and tools are the best tools for the situation. So if you know that if you're making these beautiful things on canvas and you know that you're using emotion to do that, and maybe every now and then emotions are not the most suitable thing, maybe find somebody else. You always think about the old classic movies, and they're like, get a hold of yourself, man, get a hold of yourself, right? You need somebody there who can do that for you.
Yeah, I think that's one benefit of being married to a biomedical engineering professor, because definitely
386 weddings we have photographed, and you would not believe the number of times we have seen somebody extremely creative end up with somebody extremely mathematical or engineer or like structure focused. And the reason that happens so often I'm not a professional. I just, professionally see a lot of people get married. I think the reason that happens is because there's a support structure there. And this is, I'm talking about people in their regular lives, but this is, being in a business is like being married to your business partners, right? Which I am married to my business partner. But there's a support structure there where everybody is sort of yin and yang and filling the roles that they need to fill for each other, and creating the complementary community as a whole.
Mm-hmm. And then with your latest game, and just kind of that plants a seed for the botany floral dragon.
I see what you did there, by the way. Plants a seed.
So for that particular game, that's where I don't know if you've done this prior to this game, but this one you've now brought in a wonderful illustrator for the dragons and the artwork, versus like Botanica had more using resources of historical images and illustrations, and where here it feels like you've now kind of broadened that by bringing in this artist and I don't know, have you done that with other games between those two, or am I
a little bit? So this is, for anybody who's listening, this is the next logical step of what you're creating. You can only create the same thing so much. And now I don't have an art history degree like Amy does, but one person who reminds me of this is Picasso. And actually we have an art teacher for our daughter, and they've been like walking through all the styles of art throughout history for the last few months. And I was sitting next to our daughter, and she's learning about Picasso, and I was like, my gosh, this guy knew how to switch up his target audiences. Mm-hmm. Like everybody was like, oh, he was going through inspiration and phases, and this was this phase and that phase and this study, and he spent 3 years painting everything blue. And I was like, no. What he's doing is he's following his creativity, and his creativity is just like everybody I've ever met who knows Picasso has some favorite phase, and they're all different. Nobody's like, this is, it's not quintessential. Well, so when you start thinking about this kind of stuff, you have to start thinking, all right, I can make this a lot, but people are only going to buy so much of it. How do I evolve? How do I slide my target audiences over? Now, you don't want to abandon your target audiences, because it's kind of weird. Every now and then you hear about somebody and they're like, yeah, they were an opera singer, and then they went on to become an actor, right? Well, those are sort of similar, but very different things. There's not a lot of people that are like, yeah, I love Brad Pitt's operas, but I hate his movies, right? And so you start thinking about that. So for us, we can only make so many Victorian flower games before the people who have bought all our Victorian flower games are like, yeah, I don't really need any more Victorian flower games. So then we slid the flower audience over, and we made LaFleur. Well, that's Rococo. Well, anybody who's outside of history might be like, well, isn't that the same thing? No. But any inside history, you have lots of people that are like, I love Victorianism, but I'm not really into Rococo. And I have lots of people that are like, oh, I love Rococo, but I'm not into Victorianism. And all these people love flowers. So you think about it like a Venn diagram. You take that circle of the audience and you slide it over a little bit. And then we did artistry, which is Art Nouveau. We took the French audience and we slid it up. And we took the Victorian audience and slid it into Art Nouveau, because those things were like knocking on each other's doorstep, right? They seemed really different, but they were darn close together. And then we made endearment. Now we take all the British stuff we've been doing and we slide that back over into Jane Austen and the Regency era, okay? And so the folks at Hit Point Press, that's, your son's in the RPG degree, which is absolutely a degree to be had. The folks over at Hit Point Press had a D&D supplement about floral dragons, and they had seen Kin Wald, who is the artist. They had seen her work, and they said, wouldn't that be cool to make a whole world around that work and that concept? Well, they were in Launch Boom with us, and they came. We were both on a panel for a conference, and they just sort of offhandedly, Rico, who's the owner of Hit Point, said, yeah, wouldn't it be fun to make like a version of botany with all this floral dragon stuff? And we were kind of like, oh, yeah, that would be kind of cool. Wow, that really hits on a thing. And Amy's like, I love dragons and I love flowers. And we could take dragons and put them in flowers and put them in our game. This sounds amazing. And so we started looking at that. And we're like, okay, this is the biggest risk we've taken, where we're taking and sliding the audience over. Well, it turns out we've been doing all our pre-campaign and people are going nuts for it. So it turns out a lot of people who like all these things we like also like dragons. I'm going to come back to something that you said too, Sam. But for us, since the art was mostly done, it was sort of like the same thing we always do, where we're going through a body of work and we're curating it and designing it into a game. And the process wasn't really that different. It's like, okay, well, how many dragons do we have? All right, we could do these mechanics with that. And what do we have for maps? All right, well, we could do this, this, and this with that. And how do we have that? We do work with illustrators for a few of our other games, though. We have a new game called Notebook Nations coming out. We decided to make just on the side as little side projects to our historic games, some nerdy games for me. And so we have a game called Notebook Nations coming out. We have a Romanian artist named Sebastian Tipley who did all the art for that. We have a game called Castle Tenshu that's going to be coming out later this year. That is another Romanian artist who is one of the understudies for Seb. His name is Marian Bida, and he, you know, super duper good at that. And then we, for our historic games, as you can imagine, every now and then it's like Jurassic Park. There's like gaps in the DNA where it's like, you know, we want to make for LaFleur, we wanted to make a game about the chinoiserie movement, right? Which in America, by the way, for anybody listening to France, I understand that chinoiserie is a slang term and not the name, but in America, it's the name of a whole artistic movement. FYI to everybody out there. So we made our Lorient expansion. Well, as you can imagine, in the 1700s, when very few people were leaving France, it was very difficult to find French art of people from China and Japan. So we found a girl, her name is Elizabeth Wako, and she lives in the US, and she specializes in these historical, like oil painting style art. And we found her through an agency in the UK, and we had her create art to supplement the game. And the fun thing to do is I put all the art from the game in front of people, and I'm like, figure out which ones, you know, there's 8 pieces in here that were modern day creations. Figure out which one, and they can't do it. They're like pointing to stuff that's like super famous from the 1700s, and they're like, is it that? I'm like, nope, not that one. That one's been done for 250 years. Like,
wow, that's amazing.
Sam, one thing that you had said was that you now want to like dragons, right? And so this when I was talking earlier about, you know what you're good at, and people can feel that passion, right? Mm-hmm. So when we're looking at like, think about the market as a target, right? And in the center, you have your super fans. And outside those, you have like casual fans, like people that like, I'm not looking for dragons on a regular basis, but I like dragons. I could do that. And then you have the general market that's sort of like looking in, and they never thought about buying a game about flowers or dragons, but they're like, what's going on over there? That's interesting, right? And people try to be everything to everybody, right? They try to be, now we're back to the populism in politics and stuff, where they're not really following a political party. They're just picking all the most popular topics. Well, people who try to pick all the most popular styles of art and put them together in a way that doesn't work, like, people can see that. And so you end up, if you try to be something to everyone, you end up being nothing, right? Mm-hmm. So for us, this happened on Endearment. It's a Jane Austen game. People are like, well, is it accessible? I'm like, anybody can play this game. No Jane Austen knowledge required. It's not a trivia game. And they're like, well, did you think about making it more generic so that people that don't know Jane Austen might be, no way. Heck no. We are trying to hit that center target so hard that it pulled all the rest of the target into the middle. And so, Sam, when you were like, I'm not into dragons, but now I want to be into dragons, what you're telling me is that we hit Flower Dragons as a board game so hard that you, the casual fan, has been pulling towards super fan. And so our video guy does all the videos for our Kickstarter campaigns. He's in Israel. And as you can imagine, Jane Austen isn't necessarily like, in America, everybody reads Jane Austen in high school. And in England, everybody reads Jane Austen in secondary school. Well, in Israel, it's not really part of the curriculum. And so he never watched any of the Jane Austen movies, even though he's very up on movies and everything like that. He had never read the books. And he goes, you know what? If I'm going to make this video for you guys, I feel like I should probably read something and, just maybe the first few chapters or something, just get an idea and a feel for it. Where should I start? And we're like, we'll start with Pride and Prejudice. Yeah. And so he gets the audiobook, and the next day he'd already listened to half the thing. And he's like, this is some of the most incredible writing I've ever heard in my entire lifetime. And I can't believe all this Mr. Darcy and Mr. Collins, and what is up with, this stuff. And then he starts reading Sense and Sensibility. And he's like, I can't believe these characters did this thing. And then he reads Emma, and he's like, this is unbelievable how good this is. And then he's watching the movies, and he's like, I think the 2005 Pride and Prejudice is an absolute masterpiece. Within like 3 weeks, he's like an expert on, so that too, nerdy guy, loves the same nerdy games that I like, paints Warhammer, And all of a sudden he's like a Jane Austen super fan because because we're trying to hit it so hard. So illustrators out there, artists out there, creatives who are listening, don't try to like compromise what you're doing. Like I said, I believe there's a market for every style. I believe there's a market for just about every product. Maybe it's not as big a market, but there's always a market out there. It's just a matter of finding the people that love it. When you lean into something and you do it so passionately and so aggressive is not the right word. So to its fullest extent.
Yeah, intense.
People will see that and understand it, and they will see the super fans getting excited, and that will make them want to walk over and find out more. Right? Again, not an art historian, but didn't some guy do a thing with a soup can, and everybody's been talking about it for like 60 years?
Still
right?
talking about it.
Yeah, they're still talking about this soup can. I am not the audience for that, but dang, people who like blank canvases with a dumb soup can in the middle, they got that so hard that even people who weren't into soup are looking at that soup can going, wow, right?
Yeah, maybe I'm into soup.
Yeah, and I will say,
Yeah.
Amy crushed it in terms of applying that to making it a book on its spine on the shelf. That alone
100%.
brings people into pulling it off to check it out. And so that is doing exactly that. It's just, it nailed it. So
Yeah.
nailed it.
Can I ask, I want to go back to this concept. I know we'd only have a few minutes left with you as far as, when we appreciate the time that you've given us, but you mentioned the wealth wheel, right? And so I took some notes, and I want to make sure I got all the spokes right on this, and I want to know where you go to flesh out the knowledge in this wheel. So I have on my wealth wheel, what I'm understanding is you have ideation, then you have creation, then you have marketing, then you have production, then you have fulfillment, then you have wholesale. And I guess in between marketing and production would be fundraising, right?
Yeah. I think I would put crowdfunding sort of under. There's two spokes on the wheel that fit that. There's the marketing, and then there's another spoke called the star. And they, by the way, have lots of silly names. Like, I'm technically a Lord Mechanic. What that is it's an engineer. I create machines.
Yeah.
Amy's a creator. They just do. But the star is sort of like, picture your average like social media content creator, where it's fame and charisma basically is the star. And so
Gotcha.
Think about like, you're like, what does Mike, who's selling what now? Shaq is selling like itch cream or something like that. Like, what does Shaq have to do with itch cream? Is he an itchy guy? Like, is he known for being itchy? No, but he has charisma. He's a star, right? He gets, attention is drawn to him. And it's not that he's selling out by selling itch cream. It's that he's just bringing attention to the itch cream, and all the itchy people are like, man, I could really use that itch cream, right? Right? There's people think marketing, this is a side note by soapbox. People think marketing is evil. Marketing is just the act of showing people a thing so that they can decide if they want it or not. Right?
Right.
And you show up to an interview, you wear a nice shirt, right? You're just putting your best foot forward, and that's marketing. You're putting your best foot forward and saying, would you like to buy this? And then people can make up their own mind. But so that's, crowdfunding is kind of that too, where you're trying to create, you're putting the best foot forward for your product to create that. Well, and then as far as the whole wheel goes, yeah, you're 100% right. There's basically sales, trading, and then the engine, and then the creation, and then there's a part of creation that's just like even just creating ideas that you can then take and run with it. And then the one other thing that's on there is, I don't remember if I mentioned trading. And so trading is like negotiation. My dad, he is the ultimate trader. He cannot stop trading. Like, he's like, hey, he's like, I got this old car. Who wants to buy it? He's listening. I have an old car. I'm like, who can I give this to? I do not want to trade with anybody on this, right? I'm like, here, do you want a car? Just come and get it, please. Just do anything to keep me from having to trade, right? Every time I need to sell my car, I go to my dad. He's my wealth wheel for how do I make money on selling a car. I just I hand it to him, and like a day later it's sold. Car, trailer, how you name it. My dad's trading it, right? And everybody knows these people in their lives. They probably have them in their own family, so go find them that way.
Oh yeah.
Proofreading, editing, like somebody in your family is that level of detail oriented. Like, have them do it for you, and then give them a free game.
So to that point, with the marketing, you said it was Launch Boom that you went to kind of fill in those gaps or to train you for it. Was there some place you went to for fulfillment for Kickstarter.
Oh,
fulfillment?
yeah. So mathematically speaking, a lot of people want to do like DIY on their fulfillment, but if you are fulfilling things, you are not creating things. And if you, this is when we talked about a minute or a little while ago about how a lot of artists don't know how to value their time or value their creations. Come up with the easiest way to do this is come up with a dollar amount that you have to make per hour to make you do a thing. And if you don't know what that dollar amount is, Amy and I play the high-low game all the time when we're pricing the services. We have 2 service-based companies. And so when we're pricing the services, it's like, would I shoot that wedding for $200? I would not drive for 6 hours to shoot a wedding for $200. Would I shoot that wedding for $100,000? And you got to start on extremes, like really extreme. Yeah, I would shoot that for $100,000 hand down. And so then you go, would I shoot that wedding for $1,000? No. Would I shoot that wedding for $10,000? Yes. Would I shoot that wedding for $5,000? Yeah, I think I would probably do that. Okay. Would I shoot it for $6,000? Yes, I definitely would. $5,500. That's our price. Gotcha. So you come up with an hourly rate for yourself. Would I do a thing for X number of dollars per hour? And once you get there, that's your baseline for making these decisions about, like, how do I decide when to hire somebody to do a thing for me? Well, first off, you have to have cash flow. So you can't go into debt and you can't not have the cash flow to pay for it. But once you do have cash flow, how do I decide to have a person do that thing for me? Fulfillment is not just, did I ship a thing? Fulfillment is, I received the pallet. I took all the plastic off the pallet. I opened the case pack. I took the thing out of the case pack. I took that thing. I took a folded cardboard box and I put tape on it. I put dunnage in the box. I put the thing in the box. I close the box. I go to the computer. I print the label. I take the label. I put it on there. I put that box in a pile. I contact USPS or UPS and I have them come pick it up. I have to be here. I got to meet the person. Well, Amy and I figured out, and most fulfillment centers will charge you what's called a pick and pack fee. Ours is like around $6. It cost me $6 to pay, per order to pay a person to take that thing, to do all those things, to put it in a box and to give it to the carrier. If I can't do that in less than 52 seconds, I am losing money. And I am also not creating, which makes more money. And so, I cannot print a label in 52 seconds.
Right.
Let alone do all the rest of that process. Right. And so a lot of people, like I hear people, they're like, yeah, I had 1,000 backers. I'm going to fulfill them myself. And then you follow their project updates and it's been like 6 months and they're still fulfilling things. That's 6 months where you are not creating new stuff.
Yeah.
And it would have just been worth the $6,000 to pay somebody else to have that done for you in one day. Yeah,
there are so many board game art creators out there that are going to be hounding your email box. So like,
but that's also good. But that's also, by the way, I talked about dangerous stuff. It's a very dangerous place you got to find, because like if you think about the fact that like a lot of people run a Kickstarter campaign and then they charge shipping the day the Kickstarter campaign's end, or pretty shortly thereafter. What if there is a shipping crisis? What if UPS adds a $1.12 fuel surcharge? Well, if you have 15,000 backers like you did on Botany and it costs $1.12 more, well, okay, that's $16,700 that maybe I wasn't planned. Now we're back to talking about, did I save my money and make sure anything that came up I didn't understand. So it's very important to find a fulfillment company that you like trust, and to ask them, kind of like when you go to when you go to a car dealership, first thing you do after you kick the tires is say, what's my out the door cost? Because there's fees and taxes and they want to sell you a thing and they want to put shiny thing on the outside and all this stuff. Well, that's fulfillment. So they'll say, oh yeah, that's going to cost you about $11 ship that. Yeah, but what's the pick and pack fee? What's the fuel surcharge? What's the receiving fee? What's my storage fee? So when you go in there, you need to either ask those questions yourself or have somebody on your side that's like making sure you understand that per backer it's going to cost me $17.52 to ship this. And then you're like, but other Kickstarters I've seen, they only charge $8. No, they did not only charge $8. They're subsidizing shipping. And then when they sold you the thing, $8 of what you already paid them is going to shipping, right? Gotcha. That doesn't come from nowhere. And so, yeah, I could do an hour deep dive on that topic alone.
I think you have another podcast channel to start.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, we appreciate you hanging out with us. My big takeaway from this was what you said, is when you're coming up with an idea, are you first, are you best, or are you different? And if you can't answer, put it in any one of those boxes, go back to the drawing board essentially until you can kind of slot it in.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think a lot of people like try to abandon their ideas, and I don't think that's right. I think you keep refining your idea. I do work with a lot of publishers who struggle in that department, where they find out that maybe not that their product isn't good, but maybe, and here's the thing, a lot of people go and look in the mirror and they're like, I'm not first, best, or different. Oh my God. But the truth is that people are not perceiving your product as first, best, or different. It doesn't mean it's not.
Gotcha.
And so this is where that market research comes in. Hey, what would convince you to buy this? Hey, what do you like about this? Hey, is there anything you don't? And that's the hard question. Is there anything you don't like about this? Right? Hey, what other things have you seen that this reminds you of, or that you saw that maybe you thought was like more exciting, so you went and spent your money there instead? And so, you know what? Will is a great story here. Great story here. I can't remember his exact numbers, but I vaguely remember, like, he's trying to sell a Christmas game, and he's trying to sell a Christmas game way before Christmas. And that's hard, right? That's not an easy thing to do, because it's March. Nobody's thinking about Christmas yet. Nobody's going to be thinking about Christmas until July, when all the stores put Christmas stuff on the shelves in the middle of the summer, right? And I remember, we'll have to tell this story because I'm paraphrasing something I don't remember that great, but that he had to do a little searching to find who's the audience that's going to respond to this game. And then he put it on Kickstarter, and he had a good Kickstarter, but then it was Christmas, and he put it on Amazon, and oh my gosh, did that sell on Amazon for Christmas, because it's a Christmas game,
right?
And it's incredibly quirky and different. And so that wasn't about first, best, or different. That it wasn't first, best, or different. That was like, how do I refine this? Okay, well, this is a seasonal product. All right, now I need to present it to the right people at the right time, and he had to go through that process to figure it out.
I think for me, what I take from kind of all of this too is the ability to have some flexible thinking, which can be hard if you don't have that ability to think flexible.
Yeah.
And so when you have an idea and you're kind of dead fast on this idea, to be able to say, you know what I'm getting back and feedback, the flexible thinking has to kind of be at play here to adjust, as hard as that can be, because that can be very difficult for a lot of people, that it's a really key component in getting it to where it needs to go by being open to change a little bit. So
this might be a totally irrelevant example or story here, but if anybody out there is a fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender, which I think is a masterpiece.
Yeah, a bunch of people are shouting, yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There are 4 bending styles in the first series. Then they go into the wealth wheel and they start doing lots of different bending styles later on. But the 4 bending styles are earth, fire, air, and water, right? Yeah. And the problem with most human beings is that they approach life as an earthbender or a firebender. And there are places where that's good. Earthbenders are steadfast. They put up their wall and then things run into it. And firebenders break through that wall, 100,000 miles an hour, full force rage and all that stuff, right? Airbenders evade. Okay, useful in the whole air nomad philosophy, but in business, not so much, because the problem is that thing is still there. But waterbenders, they take a thing, they flow through it. Path of least resistance. They find the way through. They redirect energy. And so this is going to sound like just really philosophical and crazy, but ever since I saw that, it was right about I think Avatar ended right about the time that we were, and when Zuko takes Azula's lightning and he learns from Katara waterbend it and he redirects that another direction, that is business and creativity in life. You're taking the things that are coming at you, and rather than being an earthbender and just being like, no, this is who I am and this is how I am, and things are battering you, but you know what? Everybody else left and you're still a wall in the middle of the desert, right? You waterbend it, you look through it, you find out, like, what's the way through? What's the path through? What's the path of least resistance? How do I take this and redirect it? How do I take this and use it to my advantage? Relevant to illustrators and everybody else in creatives, AI is dominating the discussion of everything. And to me, what's funny about AI, I have an infuriating take on this, is that I'm totally neutral about it. It's just another thing in the market. It's happening whether or not people want it to or not. It's just a thing. And so it all becomes about how, and this was photography 20 years ago when digital cameras could be bought at Costco, and all of a sudden there's a billion photographers everywhere. I'm one of those photographers. We bought our camera at Costco, right? And we started a business that kept our kids fed and in school for years, right? But when that happened, a bunch of people were like, but film is dying and film is the best. But then a few people went out and they said, aha, but it's all about how I frame myself in the market. and now they're film photographers. It's fine art. It's high quality. You're getting an attention to detail that doesn't exist. Every shot counts. Every shot matters. And in digital photography, I'll snap 5,000 pictures. I don't care. I got 20,000 pictures on this card that I can hold, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're thinking about that creative thing, and when you think about AI steps into the scene, and it's like, bah, mediocre art for everybody. Here you go, right? Well, that's a big deal for people who can't afford to create 300 pieces for their game. And so when a publisher comes to me and they're like, they're like sheepishly saying, I had to use AI art to make my thing. I'm like, that's, I'm not going to step into the politics or the morals or all that stuff of that. I'm just saying that's okay that you did that thing because your thing wouldn't exist otherwise. Now, where do you want to be with it? Do you want to hire a human creator? Great. What do we need to do to get there in order to have enough money to make because 300 pieces of art is really expensive, right? And so when we're doing Floral Dragon, the best thing is artistry is all Alphonse Mucha and Maurice Pernard. How do you pronounce his name? Vernil, Piard Vernil. I'm not very good with French names. And a bunch of I get people 5 times this week. I've had people email me, what AI engine did you use to create that game? And I'm like, well, his name was Alphonse Mucha, and he's one of the most famous artists in history, right?
Yeah.
I love
But
it.
when I'm presenting Floral Dragons, which people are instantly going to say, it's probably AI art because I've never seen this before. The first thing I do is I don't wave a big banner that says no AI. I just say it's hand-drawn art. Because what has AI done for me? It has elevated that we work with the masters of history, that we work with hand-drawn art, right? Now it's become a selling point for me. And if somebody else is using AI art, okay, well, what you say is 300 unique pieces of art in the game. And I realized now I did the avatar thing and people were cheering for me. And now I'm saying a thing that's going to make a bunch of people think that I'm the worst person on the planet. But AI is happening. I do think it's funny when it comes to AI that people are losing their minds about art, but they're not losing their minds about writing. And they're not losing their minds about all the white collar jobs that are going to get replaced by people who, all the math.
It depends on who you talk to.
Yeah, it depends on who you
It depends who you talk to. But
episode.
if you go into Facebook and stuff, there's a lot of people losing their mind about art specifically, especially when it comes to board games. Okay. But if we're talking about flexible thinking, now you're saying, look, I made this stuff. So tell that story. Tell the story of how because that's one of the biggest things that sells is stories.
Yeah.
Show yourself doing time-lapse video of drawing the thing you've drawn, of creating the thing you've created.
Yeah.
Because it's not that has become less valuable, that has become even more valuable. And it's about that creative thinking about, great, AI exists. How do I make that my advantage? Well, my advantage is now that Floral Dragons is entirely made with hand-drawn art. And here's the artist, and here's her story, and here's the creation that went into the process. And boom, rather than being a threat, AI has now become a stepping point for me to stand up above the noise and say, my flag are these beautifully hand-drawn illustrations. Check it out.
Yeah.
I never have to mention AI. The zeitgeist does that for me, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Amazing.
cool.
Wow. This was amazing. This was
Good.
fun.
I'm very verbose.
No, it's great. We kind of got a break for this episode. We got to sit shotgun to Dusty.
Oh my
today,
gosh, do you guys usually do more talking? I am so sorry.
No. This is perfect.
We usually don't interview people, so
Yeah.
One out of 10
perfection.
episodes is an interview. Probably.
Okay, great. Okay, perfect.
Yeah. So you're fine. This is good.
Yeah.
It was good. Cool. So I guess in closing, you want us to go to duxsomnia.com to just DuxSomnium.com. That's where all our games are. If you have any questions about anything that was rambling off, we're always happy to answer them. Shoot us an email through that site. We'll get right back to you. So cool. And
Amazing.
same
And
with your
please-
Instagram.
Oh, go ahead.
Just same with your Instagram and Facebook too. It's all Dux.
Yeah, Instagram's
Duxsomnia.
definitely. I mean, you talk about our target audience. You go look at our Instagram, and you can see it instantly. And that's where Amy's
It's such a
hanging out all the
good
time, Instagram.
page. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good. Cool.
Amazing. Wow. Thank you so much. And please extend a thanks to Amy as well, because
She's standing right here in her farm grubbies, looking super hot. Yeah.
so the book.
We'll have to do an interview with her next if she's
absolutely.
up for
Oh
it.
yeah. She's
I'm just busy doing the Kickstarter page for Floral Dragons.
yeah. It's all hands on
Okay.
deck right now. So
I'm
All
glad
right.
you like the book spines. Have you noticed that I make all of our expansions that size? It drives Dusty crazy.
every expansion must fit in a book spine this size.
Yeah,
That's
it's
amazing.
perfect.
All line
Oh,
up on the shelf together.
Don't
That's
think
so
I did
cool.
not notice the first time you came on.
Well, I thought those were the special edition of the Lord of the Rings from back here, from seeing it the size of a quarter on my screen. So
Oh, funny. Yeah, no, that's on the other side of the house.
okay,
All
awesome.
right.
All right, well, we'll see you later. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow, what a wealth of knowledge.
so amazing. And I just think it was a wonderful chance to talk shop with someone who comes at it from that angle and is so
Yep.
passionate and knowledgeable about the economic and mathematic and functional side of it, that we're often talking about the art side and maybe a little bit of the business, but this guy knows the business too.
Yeah, I feel like every artist needs to have a Dusty.
Everyone
know.
needs a Dusty, and I have a feeling a lot of people are going to be asking Dusty.
And I feel like every Dusty needs an artist.
Exactly.
You know?
Absolutely. And
How do you find your Dusty? That's what I want to know.
I don't know. Mine was at school, at college, so I found my Dusty at college. But go to an engineering school too, because
Yeah.
especially with like the board game field where you've got the mathematics combined with the illustration, and I think you'll find plenty of perfect pairings for creating board game success. And it was amazing.
cool.
Just the attention to detail and thinking of your audience and the product, and what you had said too about what he was thinking about with, does this hit the mark? And how about, what was your biggest takeaway for
Just I keep coming back to that first best or different, and I like how he clarified it, and he's like, just because you think you're not first best or different doesn't mean you can't be perceived that way. So I was thinking about, like, I come up with graphic novel ideas, comic ideas, and I'm always worried that I'm just like all my favorite creators already did it first and they already did it better, and I'm no different than them, so why do I even bother? That's sort of like my mean self-talk, right?
I think a lot of us have that though, don't
Right.
we?
Yeah, but I think what you got to take into account though is you are different. You're not Miyazaki, you're not Mike Mignola, you're not any of these artists that you might look up to. You're not George Lucas. You're somebody different. You're somebody with your own unique experiences, and the only thing different between you and them is that you haven't made your thing. So go make your thing, and your thing that you make might not be great at first, but like Miyazaki didn't start out great. He started out as an engineer student and kind of wanted to be an animator. So he went into animation, and he was just a low-level animator, couldn't get any work, and was worried about, how do we rebuild Japan and make ourselves a better, how do we have an animation industry here? And you look at his progression, and it wasn't until his 40s that he started becoming the Miyazaki that you know today, right?
And I'm sure a lot of that experience with the engineering, some fed into it. I mean, it all kind of does do something as part of your story and how it plays. And in terms of making bad things at first, you've got if you're making crepes, you're always throwing out the first crepe, right?
Yeah.
You don't
What was your big takeaway?
I think basically it was not worrying so much about, are there enough people to buy this, and almost that you're putting your passion of what you're interested in into something, and you can still, whether or not it's a board game for people that are into a specific thing, you can bring a new audience to your game, kind of the way that she has with people that are really into the historical romantic fiction or flowers or botanical stuff, that you can create an audience too that maybe wasn't there before. So just to really, if your passion will show, and just like you said, make the thing, and make the thing.
Make the thing. That's
Make
cool.
the thing.
All right. Well, I'll take us out. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. 3 Point Perspective is made possible by SVSLEARN, where becoming a great artist or Illustrator starts. And your host today was just me and Sam. Jake and Sam. Lee was off on assignment. And we're so grateful to have Dusty here with us today and for him dropping all of this knowledge on us. A special thanks and a shout out to our team here at SVSLEARN who makes this podcast possible. Podcast produced by Daniel Tu, our team manager Preston Smith, our keeper of the curriculum Austin Shirtliff, our show notes wrangler Lily Howell, our chief operations officer Lisa Fott, and our illustrator Annalise Black. Now, go draw something.